Now joining us, Tom Hamilton, who recently wrote a piece on Gio Reyna. And Tom, thanks for taking the time to join us. I thought it was a great piece, really just interesting, considering Claudio Reyna is a former teammate of mine with the U.S. men's national team, but more so an inside look into his family and also that life at Dortmund. Did anything stand out to you that you may not have thought of going into the interview?
I think one of the things about Gio is that he's so mature for being just 17 years old. There seems to be a bit of a trend with these guys. Over the last year, lucky enough to have spoken to Matthias de Ligt, spoken to Martin Odegaard. And what seems to bind them really is this maturity, where they seem to be a lot wiser beyond their years. Now, Gio, in himself, I mean, he hasn't yet got a driving license because he's too young. And he's learning from people like Erling Haaland and Jadon Sancho, talking about them as if they, 100-game experienced athletes, but they too are at the start of their career. But there's this really sort of exciting bond between them. Gio is very much sort of the youngest of that group, but equally, he talks with this maturity, always very sort of self-aware, extremely critical of himself and the way he's playing. But then you also hear about when he's playing Fortnite with his brother and sister, and when he's playing FIFA and how he's shrinking his clothes because he hasn't yet used a washing machine. So you get this wonderful picture of a 17-year-old trying his hand at the Bundesliga and learning everything else as he goes along.
Yeah, Tom, I know that all too well. I went to Germany at 19, couldn't figure out the laundry machine for the life of me. I think I left about 2 loads of clothes over in Germany to this day. But staying with that conversation about the relationship with Haaland and Sancho, tell us a little bit about that, because one is a chauffeur and the other is almost giving like life advice both on and off the field. I found that very interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're looking across Europe at the moment, you're looking at those three as perhaps one of the most exciting young trio of players in the game at the moment, I think. And so for Haaland, he arrived at Dortmund at the same time as Gio Reyna kind of broke into the first team. Haaland, having had this remarkable start to the season with Salzburg, scoring all these goals left, right and centre. And Reyna was in the same mid-season camp as him in Spain. So Haaland and Reyna immediately bonded around that same sort of, like first day school nervousness and the rest of it. For Jadon Sancho, he broke through into the Dortmund team at the same sort of age as what Gio Reyna is doing now. So again, he kind of sees perhaps a little bit of himself in Gio Reyna. So he's looking after more off-field matters with Gio, trying to teach him the ropes a bit in Dortmund, living on his own for the first time. But he's also giving him some really good tips around training, saying, if you make mistakes, don't worry. It's all a bit scary at the time being, but you'll learn from mistakes, you won't do it again. And with Haaland, I mean, we all know how good he is at finishing. He's helping Gio a little bit with that side of his game. And then on top of this, of course, you've also got, as I'm sure we'll talk about, Claudio Reyna, who's giving him all this advice from a dad's perspective, but also someone who's played, 112 times to the US team. So overall, he's got this perfect package of people he admires, he learns from, but is also really good mates with as well, to learn from and sort of develop his game.
Tom, what's interesting, though, and very few people even think about it, and mainly because his father played 112 times for the U.S. men's national team, had a storied career. Truth be told, his mom was an unbelievable player and had a great soccer pedigree. How much influence has she had? Because knowing Danielle as I do, knowing Claudio, she's almost had a bigger influence on him, no?
Yeah, I think from chatting to Claudio, he quite liked the fact that Danielle perhaps might be painted as the bad cop here. So she's very hard on Gio. So when Gio was young, training, as an 11-year-old, kicking a ball around for fun, if she saw him slacking off, then he'd get an earful in the car on the way home. While Claudio was a bit more sort of like the arm around the shoulder saying, just play for fun and the rest of it. And so it's Danielle now who's giving him FaceTime tips on how to cook his eggs perfectly and which detergent to use and the rest of it. But she's very much the one who's been helping him with the sort of the off-field side of the game. So talking about good habits when it comes to sleeping, nutrition and the rest of it. While Claudio is talking to him more about his, defensive positioning and the importance of tracking back.
When you look at what Dortmund has done with young players, and from all of us on this side of the pond in the States, we all looked at what Christian Pulisic did, and we knew that younger Americans were going to go there. Yet, Tom, I'm going to sit here and tell you, as I've done a couple of times already on camera, on SportsCenter and other networks, I think Gio Reyna may be more successful than Christian Pulisic. Is that off base?
I think there's one little fact there where I think Pulisic, when he joined Dortmund, he scored his first Dortmund goal age 17 and 212 days old. Gio Reyna did the same, 17 and 83 days old. So there is a wonderful symmetry there between them. Claudio himself says, you know, the Pulisic factor is huge for these young guys growing up. They're looking at what he's achieved. He's at Chelsea. But Gio Reyna, I think he's seen what has happened to Pulisic. He can learn from these sort of examples. But his versatility is truly remarkable. He can play anywhere in the midfield, also attacking midfield. He can play as a striker if needs be. I'm sure he could play out on the wing if he had to. I know from talking to Claudio, though, he's very keen that expectation is kept sort of within Gio's grasp. So he wants Gio to fulfill his potential, rather than, you know, us all saying, you know, he's the future of the US men's national team. He wants Gio to kind of grow into that space in his own way.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.